Welcome back. We're on Facebook Live with our post show. Continue our discussion about freedom of speech, activism, and branding in sports with our panel. Thank you for staying around. We get some more stuff to dice up, to chop up, as we look into the modern day athlete and what they're able to accomplish. There is a source of pride as well, Hassan. There is a source of pride that finally, we are getting somewhere. Maybe the steps are still not as quickly as we would like them to, but I think the blueprint has finally been set that these athletes who are doing an amazing job on the field, now we're starting to get it done off the field.
So there's this amazing experience that I just had. I went to Manhattan, Kansas to experience my father, David Hall, being inducted into the Kansas State Athletic Hall of Fame.
Okay.
He played basketball for the Wildcats then. And during his acceptance speech, one of the things that he acknowledged was the following day they would be honored at the homecoming game. And he said, how ironic, because when I was a student athlete here, I led a protest on the field of the homecoming game, and now I'm being honored by the institution. And he said it's this strange thing where it took a while for the university to come around and recognize me, to honor someone who criticized them, to honor someone that has held them accountable. And he said that is hard for us as a society to do, with a tip to Colin Kaepernick. And I think that is the hope, that the accountability that these athletes are trying to wield against society, against institutions, against this nation, will push and shake us and shake our consciousness, that there'll come a point where we will begin to recognize that there was some value in what they were saying and what has happened. My father has gone on to become the president of the University of the Virgin Islands. So maybe people who are disgruntled with what the athletes have said now can look beyond where they are. They're not just an athlete, but there is a full human being with a whole set of ideas and understandings and ideologies and hopes and aspirations that can move us forward as well.
Dana, that must resonate because, Syracuse years later came back and said, yeah, you were absolutely right. We were wrong.
Yeah. Somebody we all know, love, and revere said, the arc of the moral universe is long.
Bends towards justice.
But it bends towards justice. So absolutely. And that's why I think we have to continue to plug away and stay focused on the prize. And there are going to be many, hopefully, players, many advocates that do it a different way. And along the way, all of us are not going to agree with each other on how we do it. But the key is to stay focused on the goal. And so that's why when we see certain advocates meeting with Trump, not meeting with Trump, not willing to stand on the podium as LeBron does and be out front, everybody's not built that way. But keep your eye on the prize. If we're all working towards the same goal, then I think we have an opportunity to get there.
Seda, we touched a little bit on Kanye West during the television portion of the program. Well, give me your take on that bizarre meeting with the president.
So packing the bizarre meeting inside of
and is he completely just off? Just kind of off his rocker at this point?
I am not one to scapegoat mental illness because there's no correlation between mental illness and hating black people. So, so I'm not gonna put that on mental illness but I will say that, and I've said this for some time, there's a type of mentality that Kanye has, that Trump has, that Alex Jones has. These are people, men, who like to explain away their ineptitude by massive conspiracy theories against them, right? So it's always the other team is the reason I can't achieve. There's also in that a very similar type of ego style in which, Trump likes anyone who likes him. Anyone's a genius who calls him a genius. And I think that 100%. Kanye is the same way, right? Never having met the man, but having plenty of data to go off. I think that he is the same way. And so I think the political ideology aligned because the personal mentality was already aligned, right? This idea that there must be some massive conspiracy explaining why I'm not greater, right?
Right.
And this very, ego-driven thing, you know, my thing is I as soon as you call yourself a genius, I know you're not one.
Right.
You know, but I think that there is something about the right that speaks to Kanye in his personhood. Along with that, Kanye has revealed himself to be extremely toxic in terms of his gender, his masculinity, right? He has an extremely, you know, this disdain he has for femininity, that somehow Hillary, he couldn't support it because it didn't make him feel like a man.
Right. Like, as a man, I can't understand her.
Right. As a man, I can't.
That's
you
the problem of toxic masculinity.
Right. So it allows you to couch everything in authentic masculinity. And, you know, Kanye, from what I've seen, is a person who can sort of only articulate the world through his lens of, you know, sort of what makes him a man or not. There's some very deep issues in there.
Just a huge, you know, divide. You know,
yeah.
When Obama was in office, I used to hear it almost every day. I've never seen such cultural, social, economical warfare.
Right.
The country's never been so divided.
Oh, right.
And now you don't even hear that anymore. And the country couldn't be even more divided.
It's the new normal.
Right.
And
which is just, you know, heartbreaking, really.
Well, but there are positives. If you know. I'm in commercial real estate, so I'm always looking for the upside in every situation. The positives I think we've gone through a period of time where there wasn't any in-your-face opposition.
Right.
I think
that's what made America great.
Yeah,
it was great because there was no opposition.
But it wasn't.
The other side was just they were chilling. This is great. This is awesome.
But there was opposition, but it wasn't in your face. And now we have an administration which gives cover and even stimulates, you know, racial opposition, ethnic opposition, political opposition. It's all about the controversy. So with that gives. And should give, I would hope, people of color a wake-up call to stand up and take a position. And that starts with voting. I had to get that plug in.
Yeah, absolutely.
That starts with voting.
Well, we know what happens if you don't vote.
Right.
You lose.
You've seen it. You're living it.
Yeah, we're living it.
You know, on this note of voting, you know, and, you know, Rasan, you know this all too well, you know, doing the law. We are at a point now, I think we actually have not really recognized loudly enough that we are at voter suppression levels we haven't seen since the 50s, right? That we have de-democratized a country that at a moment had a chance to be a democracy. You know, I'm thinking of the work of Carol Anderson on this in terms of, you know, although we, you know, all would love to see, you know, personal, you know, impetus to get out and vote, but to also be not naive to weaponizing this idea that we just all have equal access to it. The voter suppression strategy against us is like we have not seen since the actual 1950s when we actually had poll taxes.
I mean, I think it's a combination of things, right? You can look at voter apathy, where people are just like, it doesn't matter if I vote, or that there's nobody that I'm interested in voting for because I don't know that they really reflect my interest. And proof that it does matter is you look at here in Suffolk County at the district attorney's race. In the Democratic primary, it was a 5-way race in the Democratic primary with a presumed winner,
Greg
Henning, 3 people of color, and a white woman who was a progressive. And people just said, you know, Greg Henning's going to win, and the people of color and progressives are going to split that vote. Rachel Rollins won 40% of the vote with a 35% increase in voter turnout, or ballots cast for the district attorney race. So that says something. But then to Saida's point around the voter suppression, since the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, you know, these states have run rampant with voter suppression initiatives. With, you know, in Georgia, there's like 53,000 voter registration applications on hold, because the person who is running for governor is the secretary Secretary of
Of
State.
State.
Like, talk about a
Exactly.
conflict of interest.
Exactly.
Felony disenfranchisement laws for people who
Yeah.
have been
Secretary
incarcerated and
of
convicted of
State,
felonies.
yeah.
Like with the voter ID laws that have been implemented. So there is this concerted effort to exclude huge segments of population that are
Yes.
overwhelmingly Black, Latinx,
Yes.
poor, and young.
And why is that able to happen? I won't step off into politics because we could run another show on that. But the point is, the midterm elections, down ballot elections, those are elections that people of color and a lot of Americans, white Americans as well, who don't come out and vote.
Right.
Who runs the voting apparatus in every state? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris,
The
you may.
Russians.
we needed a moment of levity.
Well,
Although it could be true. But you have usually what has happened, for example, the Republican Party, when they were out of power at the top levels, were winning those down ballot elections.
And they spent
midterm-
$40 million to redistrict so
and
they
it's
could
the-
win those down ballots.
That's right. And it's the state apparatus. How many governors out of the 50 states are Republican, for example?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
What is it, 40,
Right.
39, 40?
And this is clear.
They run the apparatus.
Yeah. You know, how we have set up this democracy is. I had the pleasure of judging a debate recently about the Electoral College and learning the extremely, and deliberately racist history of the Electoral College. Changed my mind completely of it. I thought the Electoral College constitutionally is something that, it might protect minorities in certain cases. No, the Electoral College was literally put in place to make sure that slave states were overrepresented in this process, which is why Virginia had more presidents than anyone else, because Virginia
And let's make no mistake about it. I mean, in this state alone, they've redistricted forever.
Absolutely.
And people have gone to jail for
Absolutely.
redistricting to get their people in office and give us as
Absolutely.
little say as possible.
Yeah.
Exactly right. But my point in bringing that up is you got to vote.
The
Yeah.
local elections matter.
Local
No, they
elections,
absolutely matter.
down ballot
Yeah,
matters,
down ballot
midterm elections, all those non-sexy
Right.
voting times
Right.
of the year matter.
The census
but
matters,
the
too.
The census absolutely matters.
It matters, but the party that we overwhelmingly have been supporting for generations aren't focused on that, at least in my humble opinion, at the level that we should be.
And, and it's fascinating for me because when I think of, those local elections, I think of this is actually probably the ripest opportunity in terms of getting substantive representation. So, representation that looks like you, right?
Yes.
That idea that starts at the level of, school board, and and we have a history of, which is why I think those elections are so important, because not only is there's an immediacy to those elected positions, but that is your greatest chance of getting people who absolutely represent you.
And it creates the pipeline, and I'm glad you brought up Ayanna Pressley because
which is non-existent
Right.
almost.
Right.
here in
Right.
Massachusetts.
I mean, so the reason Ayanna Pressley is so important is the district that she won, that 7th congressional district, grew out of the advocacy work that I had the privilege of being a part of in the Drawing Democracy Coalition, where we went statewide to get input and feedback from community partners about what the district needs to look like, and as well as having a cartographer to do an assessment of the demographics. That district was specifically drawn to be a majority minority district, and she didn't win it immediately. It stayed Capuano for 6 years since that district was drawn. But here's the trickle down effect of that is because she was running in this hotly contested race, you look at Rachel Rollins, who the same people who were going out campaigning for Ayanna Pressley were also going out campaigning for Rachel Rollins and Nika Elugardo. So it's like, and you have this sea of black women coming into these positions of power, and that's why the census is important. And there's an intentional reason why they wanted to have that citizenship question on the census, because they know that it has a chilling effect, that people who are undocumented are not going, or are less likely to respond to the census when they think that there's some tie between the federal census and ICE. And when you have lower representations of numbers, those districts get drawn differently, and that's why local elections become important too, because the state representatives and state senators who were at some point probably a school committee person or a city council person are the ones who draw those districts that even impact the federal election. So it's all connected and so important.
Yeah.
So there's work to do.
Yes.
You know, and that's not going to change. You know,
Yes.
There's work to do.
That's not going to change, and you know, unfortunately, because of our president, it's created more work. I mean, we've taken so many steps backwards trying to fix some of the ailments that we've been dealing with, over the last 50 years.
But what I like is some of the, bringing the discussion kind of full circle, some of the athletes who have presence, they have capital resources and connections. They have their own megaphones now that you have, they can Twitter and Instagram, they don't have to go through a filter.
Right, real voices.
They can lead. And even the even Charles Barkley was helpful down in Alabama, right?
Right.
And they've taken ownership too. Like the Players Coalition, we had the benefit of working with Devin McCourty and Troy Brown and other athletes on the Patriots through the Players Coalition. They showed up at the State House while we were trying to get some major criminal law reform bills passed and met with Senate leadership, House leadership, and the governor's people. Like, that had never happened before. That platform that they have, that influence, it's tremendous.
So there's a couple of things. That mentality, that's why I say, the mentality, it causes objection from some folks like Laura Ingraham, shut up and dribble.
Yeah. Right.
It gives, it gives.
Well, she's old school. I mean, she hasn't evolved until the year 2018.
But Fox's ratings are rolling. And so there's a mentality there.
But we know why they're rolling.
Yeah.
Because same reason why the president's in office is the same reason, the same audience that is listening to Fox.
So we know there's that mentality out there. We've seen it a lot. But the other comment I want to make is that I think it's interesting to see that now that Colin Kaepernick, in a sense, Nike has demonstrated that it's not a liability to take a stand.
Right.
It will be very telling as to how he spends that money that he's getting. He didn't, in my view, I don't know the man, but in my
early
view,
on in the process, he donated $1 million up.
And
that was before he was getting anything. He was out of work at that point.
But
so
I just think,
at least the optics initially are solid.
I'm not throwing a dart at him. I'm just saying, but it's going to be interesting to see what he does with that capital. I think that it would speak volumes. Because a lot of athletes now will say, well, okay, they're emboldened. They should be emboldened.
Right.
I can take a stand. And, it worked out for Colin. He's not playing football, but it's opened up a door. And I would say to you, having been an athlete many years ago, that door is going to be much wider than the athletic door.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's going to last longer. So some athletes will be emboldened. But it'll be telling to see what he does with however much he makes in fees and other types of reserves, going forward, because I think that would be a tremendous example for black investment. But we'll wait and see.
Well, he could never have predicted what was going to happen.
Well, that's the point.
Right.
I don't think he did it for that purpose. I don't think he took a knee for that purpose. But now. But this is America. Now that gifts have fallen on you. What's the old saying? To those who much have been given,
Much is required.
This is required. So let's see where he goes from here.
But let's be clear. I again give Nike no sort of accolades in all this. They sat on that man for 2 years while he was out there struggling, while he was being blackballed. They
and we're
sat
on the
that man
verge
for
of
2
getting
years.
rid of him.
Exactly.
That's been reported.
And then decided, now the market analytics have come back.
That's right. Let's hold on.
Let's do something.
You're 100% correct. It was a market play.
Yeah.
It was a branding, marketing play.
Absolutely. And it happened after he had sort of been through the hellfire of it, right? So as he's going through it.
He wasn't in the storm.
He wasn't in the storm. So after the storm, after he basically kind of won the storm in the hearts and minds of many of the public, their target consumers.
Exactly.
Then it was, let's
safe.
do something with it. It was safe, right?
So maybe the wrong people are burning the Nike shoes. Maybe we should be.
Well, that segment of that segment of people who burn, you know, Nike shoes, that is a segment of you know, Hillary's basket of deplorables that are angry about everything. They want to boycott Meryl Streep. They want to boycott New York City. They want to, you know, they want to boycott Walmart, which I'm like, isn't Walmart for y'all? You know, their outrage is manufactured around everything. So I think that they're honestly irrelevant, and if anything, they only help Nike's campaign go viral.
Well, I went out, you know, as soon as that they made the announcement, and certainly after I saw the advertisement on the Thursday night game, the first NFL game of the season, I ran out and bought some Nike stock, so I've been following it. No, I absolutely did.
Right.
I said, this baby's a long-term hold.
Right.
And what the analytics show is that more than just tapping into folks who have bought Nike products, they've created a new market. People people who didn't buy athletic shoes at all are now buying Nike shoes.
No, that's true.
That's where the bounce comes from.
Right.
That's true. Although I will also say to those consumers, if you would like to support the movement, you could actually support the movement. We still have people from Ferguson who are serving parole and probation. You could support legal defense funds. Like, you know, Nike as a brand is ubiquitous. It's like Coca-Cola. So, you know, when I see, you know, I've seen, you know, black people hit the stage at NAACP, you know, events with their Nike backpacks on, and I'm thinking how ridiculous, right? Because it's a ubiquitous brand. It's like saying I'm wearing blue jeans in support of, you know, it's
Kleenex.
It's Band-Aid. It's, you know, and to sort of do this strange middleman of funneling your money to the corporation when you could have just put it towards the movement that Kaepernick actually puts his money towards is a bit bizarre for me.
Saida, we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank
Dana.
Good to see you.
Rahsaan.
Very nice meeting you.
Absolutely.
That's going to do it for
Absolutely.
this edition of Basic Black, our Facebook Live edition. We're going to wrap it up here. Look forward to seeing you back in the very near future. Have a great night.